What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the Rotoworld Basketball Show presented by NBC Sports. I'm Dan Titus, Yahoo Fantasy Basketball Analyst, joined with Rotoworld Fantasy Basketball Analyst Noah Rubin and Raphielle Johnson. We're into week 3. We got plenty of lowlights, injuries, schedule things you need to talk about. But first, I want to start off on a good note, guys. Victor Wembanyama had his second career 5x5 line last week. Hakeem Olajuwon is the number one player in 5x5 lines with 6. It took him 4 years to get to his second 5x5 game. So pretty impressive that Wembanyama's already pacing to possibly shatter that. And also Klay Thompson amassed 2,500 3-pointers in his career. He's only the 6th player in NBA history to do that. So good to see some good things coming from the NBA. Now let's get to the other things. Only 2 teams in the Eastern Conference are above 500 right now. It's the undefeated Cleveland Cavaliers and the Boston Celtics. On the other side of that, we got 2 bottom feeders. Let's start with the Sixers, 1-5 currently. Paul George returned on Monday, which was a good sign to see. It was a pretty rough outing for him, though. 15 points, 4 for 14 field goals, and 6 turnovers, and clearly waved off a hot Tyrese Maxey for the game winner. Very questionable move there. But Raph, want to get your perspective on what we can see or fantasy managers can expect from Joel Embiid now that he's been suspended for 3 games, but could he be nearing a return?
Yeah, I think the suspension goes into effect starting tonight. So that's a good sign regarding his availability. So you're looking at next week and having him available at the start of the week. So that's a sigh of relief for fantasy managers who have him rostered, because he was just sitting there wasting away in your IL plus spot, if anything. So, you're looking at it's only a 3-game week for Philadelphia, which I think, given the health concerns and the back-to-backs, that's probably a good thing. But the negative is that they have a Tuesday, Wednesday back-to-back next week. So you're probably looking at a 2-game week for Embiid. Depending on what his minutes are, he can still give you high-level production for those 2 games, though.
And Noah, what are you seeing from, I guess, a fantasy perspective on players that have been, benefiting from Paul George's absence, Joel Embiid's absence? You're not dropping Andre Drummond. Are you dropping Kelly Oubre? Is there anybody else on the margins that you may want to, maybe look to move on, just with their stars kind of returning here?
Yeah, if I can real quick add in on Embiid, and then I'll talk about the other guys as well. But just thinking about, it is a 3-game suspension for him. And before that, he was already out of the lineup. So it's like all of a sudden he's healthy, because they don't want him serving the suspension with games he was already going to miss. So now is it like, okay, when he gets back, is he fully healthy? Is he going to be available every, probably not back-to-backs, things like that moving forward, as we already expected, but are they just trying to get the suspension served and then he's going to miss time after that? So I think it's something to monitor, but Drummond hasn't been great. So I don't think he's a guy that you have to hold, especially if Embiid is going to be back, even if it is for a few games at a time. I don't think Andre Drummond is a must-hold, must-roster at this point. And then Oubre, and I think Caleb Martin's probably the other guy that had a little bit of value. I think both of them will take more of a hit when Embiid comes back as well, less shots to go around. Martin should maybe get you some rebounds, some assists, maybe a defensive stat here and there, but neither guy I think is a must, or I guess of the 3, Oubre is maybe the only one that I would say probably hold on to this guy in 12-team leagues.
Yeah, I'd still probably hold on to Drummond, just because I feel like Embiid's just going to be periodically resting throughout this. Not surprised to see him playing for the NBA Cup now that they have a sponsor in the Emirates. So, yeah, pretty strategic there by the Sixers, but not surprising to say the least. The other team that's pretty bad in the Eastern Conference is the Bucks. They're 1-6 right now. Giannis Antetokounmpo sat out Saturday's contest with a hip injury in their loss to Cleveland. Monday's loss to Cleveland. Noah, do you have any concerns about Giannis? I mean, there's a lot of conversation going on in the background about, if this goes left, does he request a trade? Does something happen at the deadline? How do you think this factors in from his fantasy value?
I don't think I'm too concerned yet, because it was just one absence. It wasn't, I don't know if this is concerning or encouraging, but it wasn't on the second night of a back-to-back. So it's not like, okay, he's definitely not going to play back-to-backs moving forward. I think we will get a better idea of what that looks like. They have a back-to-back Thursday, Friday, and then I think another one coming up early next week. So we'll see exactly what that looks like. But I don't think at this point I'm super concerned that, okay, Giannis is going to be missing a ton of time this year, because I think they do need to try and figure out if they're going to win games. And if they're still losing games when he's available all the time, which again, he's only missed one game at this point, then yeah, there is a chance that I think things happen at the trade deadline. But that is still a few months away. So not too concerned about the hip at this point until he starts missing more than just that game.
Yeah. Are you worried about some of the external stuff, Raph, in terms of like rostering Giannis?
Not too much. He's always struck me as someone who's going to play hard when he's on the floor. Like I don't think that's going to be an issue. In addition to the hip, he'd been dealing with knee tendonitis for every game this season, only to play in each one. So maybe this time off helps with that as well. But I'm not too worried about that. I think Milwaukee's pretty much have to be all in. It's not like they have too much draft capital. Their draft picks really haven't shown much promise. Like you can argue those guys need to play a bit more, but they've already decided they're not going to extend Marjan Beauchamp, pick up his option for next season. Got Andre Jackson Jr. hasn't really shown much either. Chris Livingston, like we haven't seen much from those guys, and I don't think we're going to get. You don't have a veteran coach like Doc Rivers. No matter what you may think of him as a coach, you don't have a coach like that on your roster and then pivot to a rebuild in February. So I think for better or for worse, they're in it for the long haul. It's Bobby Portis time, basically, in terms of fantasy.
Yeah, I was definitely I was probably higher on most than most on Bobby Portis, just because he's been playing well under Doc Rivers. He's like a 7th round value under Doc Rivers. I don't know, man. I think that noise is going to get louder and louder the more that they lose. They don't look like a cohesive unit at all. So yeah, we'll see what it do, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see Giannis take a couple games off here and there if they continue to lose like this. You got to preserve their long-term health, and especially if you're going to be making some trade demands in time, but we'll see. Don't know what that's going to hold. But what we do know, man, we were celebrating Paolo's 50-point performance last week, and then literally a game after that, he hurts his oblique, and he's going to be missing 4 to 6 weeks at minimum. Wendell Carter Jr. has also been out with a foot injury. He's had issues staying healthy throughout his career. Raph, are you picking up anyone from the Magic as a result of these 2 injuries?
Picking up, no. I'd probably watch list Tristan da Silva, though. Thought he played well in Cleveland. I think it was Friday. We had 17 points and had some good counting stats across the board. His production fell off the following game, but I think he's someone I'd keep an eye on just because of that spot in the starting lineup. I think he's a better fit than Anthony Black was in his 1-spot start. So I keep an eye on him. And also, if you have Franz Wagner, is this a time where he kind of takes off offensively? I wouldn't say he struggled early on, but it felt like his influence wasn't as big as it can be offensively with his skill set. So those are the 2 things I kind of have my eye on right now.
Yeah, what do you think, Noah?
Yeah, Franz is an interesting one. I know he played fairly well in their last game, but I think, Raph brought it up. Like he kind of struggled early on. After Paolo went down, he was now the focal point of the defense, and that's something that takes adjusting to. I think it's a good opportunity for him to step up, have some boosted stats. But when you're playing a team like the Thunder, like if they're only focused on you, you're basically the I would say only at least main playmaker. Like that's a tough team to score on. But I think with Wendell Carter, him going down now, there's just a center split between Goga Bitadze, Mo Wagner. Neither guy is, I don't know, the super intriguing streaming option, like drop what you're doing and go pick them up right now. But both guys were able to get, at least 1 steal and a block, decent rebounds, a couple buckets here and there. So I think in deeper leagues, they both will see enough minutes to provide a little bit of value, but not a ton.
Yeah, I think I gotta walk back my Anthony Black takes. I had him as one of my top pickups this week, and he's just not showing enough in the minutes he's been provided. And so, like, I've already moved on in the leagues that I picked him up in, especially with this week being so, big slate centric. There's just no place where I'm going to fit him into my lineups anyway. So, yeah, I think this is just an avoid for me until the Magic can actually figure out, who are the pieces that they're going to really have step up. It's going to be a lot of Franz Wagner, obviously a lot of Jalen Suggs, who's been playing really well this year, and has actually been one of probably the better values in fantasy basketball, especially with this workload that's coming his way without Paolo. So, yeah, I think it's an avoid for me. The Nuggets are also, for as much of they're enduring some injuries, they're still 4-3 right now, but Jamal Murray is going to be still out with a concussion. We don't know when he's coming back. He just became IL eligible in Yahoo League, so stash him there if you can. But also, I think more concerningly, Aaron Gordon's going to be missing multiple weeks with a hamstring injury. Noah, what should fantasy? Oh, calf injury. Sorry about that. Calf injury. Yep. Noah, what should fantasy managers be doing in terms of pickups? I mean, Christian Brown is 44% rostered right now, so I'd be hard pressed to think that he's available in many leagues. Are we rushing to pick up Peyton Watson, or what do you think?
We are absolutely dropping what we're doing to rush and pick up Peyton Watson. He's got a fantasy-friendly game. Just looking at what he did in their last game, Aaron Gordon played 4 minutes before getting hurt. In 31 minutes, he had 16 points, 3 boards, an assist, 2 steals, 2 blocks, and a 3. So, like, he can do a little bit of everything. He's incredibly athletic. Now he'll be, I would assume, the starting power forward next to Jokic, which should get him at least, I'd say, 3 easy buckets a game. And he's doing stuff on the defensive end. Yeah, he's absolutely a guy. He would be a high priority streaming option. Make sure he's not on your waiver wire.
Yeah, Raph, do you think is there anyone else that could benefit here with these absences, or are you primarily prioritizing Peyton Watson?
Yeah, Watson is the priority. I think Julian Strawther in deeper leagues is someone else to keep an eye on because they're going to need some scoring. Watson can score, but I don't know if he's going to be able to bring to the table what Gordon was able to bring to the table to start this season. So I think Julian Strawther in deeper leagues is also worth a look. That would be about it. I know Russell Westbrook is like 25% roster or something like that. I think that's a fair number given the inefficiency that he brings to the table. So Watson, then Strawther. If you can't get Watson, I would go there.
Yeah, that's where I'm at with it. Watson's still pretty under rostered though, 18%. So I think you still have a pretty good opportunity to snatch him on waivers. Strawther, way under rostered for, considering if you miss out on Peyton Watson, you can definitely get Strawther. I think he's going to be good for points and threes, and he's actually averaging 1.3 steals per game. So I think that's like an underrated aspect of Strawther's game that I don't think many fantasy managers are probably expecting. So I'll definitely keep an eye on both of those guys. They were in the closing lineup last game, so I think the Nuggets have no choice but to pretty much bank on their depth right now in wake of those injuries. Stephen Curry returned for the Golden State Warriors, had 24 points, 3 boards, and 6 assists in his return. Brandon Pajemski did leave with an illness. Doesn't look like it's long-term. Nothing really to report on this Warriors thing. I think they're just getting healthy. They're playing very well. Buddy Hield continues to cook. So if you have him rostered, congratulations. On the Pelicans side, though, Zion Williamson was added to the injury report. I did see that he was active at shoot-around today, so we'll see. He's dealing with a hamstring injury. But Noah, how would you rank pickups for the Pelicans between Yves Missi, Jordan Hawkins, and Jose Alvarado?
I know, I think we're going to talk about it a little bit later, but Jordan Hawkins is dealing with an injury as well. And then Jose Alvarado was also added to the injury report. So it wouldn't shock me if, basically everybody on the roster just keeps getting added to the injury report. Just things are once again not going well with the Pelicans as far as health goes. So I think Yves Missi, I guess it would depend on categories. Like obviously if you need rebounds or blocks, Yves Missi. If you need steals or assists, Jose Alvarado. If you need points or threes, Hawkins. In general, I feel like when the entire team is healthy, Hawkins probably – actually, it might be Yves Missi that is the safest option just because I don't think that, there's going to be a ton of minutes on the perimeter for Alvarado or Hawkins when the entire team is healthy. So Yves Missi probably has the most long-term value and maybe Alvarado in the short term.
Yeah, where do you say, Raph? What's your rank?
Yeah, I think I would go – I think I'd probably go Hawkins short term. I know he's been dealing with the back spasms, but the scoring, especially given how many scorers are out of that lineup, I think I would lean Hawkins in the short term. But overall, I think Missi's got the highest ceiling in terms of long-term value because unless they go out and acquire a center or find someone on the free agent market that's worlds better than what they currently have. So.
Yeah, I'll probably split the difference. I think long term, I think I agree it's Yves Missi just because, they have no front court depth. And until they address that, Missi's gonna survive that. he's already out getting more minutes than Daniel Tice. So I think that's just going to be a better look long term. But then in the short term, I kind of like what Jose Alvarado's been providing. I mean, Noah mentioned it. You'll definitely get there for the assists and the steals, but consistency. I mean, Jordan Hawkins, yeah, he can give you threes and scoring, but he doesn't really do much else outside of that. And the fact that he's dealing with that back injury. But yeah, I think you can't go wrong with any of them. I think this schedule isn't the best for this week, but if you're looking ahead, it might be a little bit more advantageous to pick up these guys. I did have to drop Misi in a couple spots just because I got injuries, man. Can't hold these guys forever.
Mm-hmm.
Boston Celtics, Jaylen Brown's dealing with a hip injury. Joe Mazzulla said that it's not believed to be long term. Do you guys have any concern, Raph? I mean, I think that this is just, standard rest for a star. They're coming out the gates hot. Peyton Pritchard's cooking. We don't need him right now. What do you think?
Yeah, I think he'll be fine. Maybe miss a couple more games and then come back fresh as a daisy.
Yeah. How about you, Noah? Any concerns here?
Yeah, no. I mean, they have enough depth and enough talent, even when people aren't playing, that they're just fine against probably at least 20 NBA teams, if not more. So yeah, just give them a day or two to rest. We need to focus on June, not November.
100%. So one of the players that's been playing, I mean, well above anyone's expectation. I don't think any of us ranked him anywhere close to what he's performing value-wise as is Gradey Dick, and he's just been absolutely thriving in that scoring primary. I mean, he's pretty much become the primary scorer on that team with RJ Barrett. What are we doing with this value for the rest of the season here? Obviously, Emmanuel Quickley's out. Scotty Barnes is out. I'll go to you first, Raph. Are you buying or selling Gradey Dick?
That's interesting phrasing, but I'm going to go ahead and say I'm going to buy because we don't know what's going on with Quickley. Like every game he's doubtful, then he's out. And it's like, well, what's the truth
Mark Williams.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody called
Toronto
him Mark
becoming the
Williams.
New Charlotte. Didn't project that to happen.
But yeah, either way. But yeah, I'm all in. I have him on my roster. I would keep, but
all in on Gradey Dick. You just got to make sure you say Grady, man.
Grady, yeah. But come on, all right. Yeah, I think the question is like, do you sell high now with him as a third round value, and hope you can get something equivalent or close to that in return, or do you hold? Because I think his role is going to shift once they get Barnes and Bruce Brown and those guys back on the floor. But they're still going to need his perimeter shooting. So I don't think he's going to just fall out of the rotation. So I would hold Gradey right now.
Yeah, 35th in 9-cat leagues right now. Noah, what are you doing with Gradey Dick?
Yeah, I think I'm holding him. He's not going to get 20 shots a game when the entire team is healthy, obviously. But it's not like RJ Barrett where he's getting a ton of assists with no playmakers or ball handlers in the lineup. So I think he's going to be able to hold value the rest of the season. And I think the other factor that we need to consider is literally on media day, Jakob Poeltl was like, we're not trying to win games. So like this team is a rebuilding team. They're not pushing for the playoffs. So their priority should be, hey, like, let's see what we have with these young guys. So they know what they have in Scotty Barnes. It wouldn't be shocked if he was shut down at some point or continue to miss extra time with nagging injuries. Same thing with Quickley, maybe even RJ. I think this is going to be a season where they're prioritizing Grady's minutes, Grady's shots. And it may not be as good as like just looking at last game. He had 26 points on 20 shots, 5 assists, 3 steals, 2 blocks. Like that's not what you should be getting from him the rest of the year. But I think he's a guy that holds, long-term value. I guess if you're expecting him to be a third-round guy and you're able to trade him for probably a more secure third-round option, then I would say sell in that instance. But I don't think he's going to fall off a cliff when the team gets healthy.
Yeah, I'm selling. Like, I don't know. I just don't believe this to be anywhere close to, 21 points per game, 2 stocks. That's definitely helping his fantasy value for sure. But the volume you guys spoke of, once Emmanuel Quickley's back, there's 16, 17 shots going that way. Scotty Barnes is also like the main cog of this offense. It's not RJ Barrett. And while they've been really well together and it's been crazy to see RJ Barrett's ascension as a playmaker. I just don't believe it, man. 35th. I would be hunting, 6th to 8th round, probably guys I think is probably reasonable. Get like a Brandon Miller, get like a Bradley Beal. I don't know. I would just flip him for something right now because he's not going to be able to withstand this type of production for the rest of the season. But this is a nice ride, like for sure, a nice ride. But I mean, Gradey Dick's not going to be a top 50 player this year. Like, let's pump the brakes here. And I don't think you guys think that either. I'm just saying you could get that value back, especially for someone that's struggling out the gates. There's plenty of them. But one thing that's not struggling, I mean, what's going to happen in this NASCAR Cup Series final race? We got it. Just 4 drivers remain, and they head to the desert to determine who will be crowned champion. It's the NASCAR Championship in Phoenix, with coverage starting at 3 p.m. Eastern on Sunday on NBC and Peacock. Man, we got some bad injury news coming. I think the most important one is LaMelo Ball. He had surgery on his right ankle. It's been giving him issues, for the last few seasons. He's now having soreness in that ankle, despite playing with ankle braces. There's been no reports of whether he's going to be missing time yet, but he is on the injury report. So, Noah, how concerned are you for LaMelo Ball right now? Is there anything that's like, is this like panic mode? Is like, oh my God, like what are we about to endure? We already know what Mark Williams is going through. We're not even going to talk about him today, just because we got 0 updates from the Charlotte Hornets, once again, unsurprisingly to anyone. But how are you feeling about LaMelo Ball right now with this ankle soreness reported?
If I can just go off topic, just for I'll keep it like 30 seconds. But you were talking about Gradey Dick and saying how just enjoy the nice ride, don't pump the brakes. And I thought you were going to use that as your segue into the NASCAR ad read.
I should have.
And I was like, oh, he's going to, speaking of nice rides, like, yeah. Okay. Anyways, off topic, not that important. But
I had it. It was there.
I wanted to make sure the joke was at least said at some point.
Yeah.
So anyways, but yeah, LaMelo and ankle injuries. We are talking about it for the 3rd straight year, and probably he's dealt with ankle injuries. I think all but 1 year of his career. And I think it's a late addition to the injury report. That's less than ideal. We'll see if he plays tonight. I think I will definitely be keeping a close eye on that. If he doesn't, I think that we can assume that 6th man of the year candidate, maybe just a lot of hype around him, Trey Mann, could be sliding into the starting lineup in his place. But I think another name that I want to throw out is Vasilij Micic, who was kind of the starting point guard last year when LaMelo missed the whole season after he got traded over from the Thunder. And he can be a pretty good source of assists and steals. So we'll see how the rotation shapes out. I think I would definitely be prioritizing adding Mann if he's still on your waiver wire. But Micic could end up having some value if LaMelo misses this game and continues to deal with ankle injuries throughout the year.
Yeah, and Raph, Nick Richards is also out with rib cartilage, I guess a rib cartilage injury. Mm-hmm. He's going to be missing at least 2 weeks. Anytime you put at least in front of anything, I'm concerned. I mean, you're not going to pick up Grant Williams, right? Like, what is this just an avoid for you at this point with pretty much no front court left? Musa Diamante, I don't know.
This is your reminder this is your reminder that there are 29 other teams in the NBA. That's basically how I look at it. Like, no.
Leave it alone.
Let's just move on to the next topic. Like, there's nothing to do there with Williams and Richards both out right now.
Nope. So let's talk about Tyrese Haliburton, and it's not. There's been nothing concrete, but Kevin O'Connor of Yahoo Sports did say today on a podcast that on Wednesday that he's dealing with back spasms that date back to last year. And so one of the more prominent questions I've gotten this season thus far is like, hey, should we just sell Tyrese Haliburton? I'm like, nah, wait till he goes off and has those games to build his value up. Because right now there's just no point in he's your 1st round pick. Like, you're not going to get equal value. Mm-hmm. But with news like this coming out, does this change your opinion, Raph? Like, are you a little bit more concerned about his performance to date?
Yeah, you are concerned because you've got the back spasms, the leg issues, that happened in the playoffs and then carried on through the Olympics. There's not too much time, to really get healthy, during the NBA season. So until you hit the All-Star break. So I think that is a concern. And it kind of depends on the build of the remainder of your roster if you're grappling with this decision. Like if you have other quality options, you may be able to stick it out here a little bit longer and wait to see what happens with Haliburton. But if not, then I think you have to consider it. And it's almost like taking a home run swing with like your second or third round pick in a draft, because you're not going to get a first round value player back, I don't think. You're hoping you get someone in return who can approach that. And that's really difficult to call.
Yeah, I think that's the most difficult part of trying to move a guy like Haliburton is like, the upside is there, but if he hasn't reached it yet, we don't know that he's gonna. Yeah. When is the time to cut your losses and just say, hey, let me get a third, fourth round guy for him before this gets even worse? Andrew Nembhard did return to the lineup, so that's a good thing. But Aaron Nesmith is going to be out with an ankle injury. Benedict Mathurin has definitely stepped up. And Noah, is this someone that you think can hold more value than we've seen in the past? Like generally in 9-cat leagues, Benedict Mathurin has always struggled to, do stuff outside of scoring primarily. But it seems like he's kind of turned the corner here. We're seeing more rebounds, more efficiency. I mean, I love the free throw rate that he gets. I mean, I think that's a real boost to his value. But have you added him in any leagues outside of, 9-cat? I mean, outside of points leagues?
I haven't, but I definitely think there is a case to add him. And I think, the rebounds are pretty nice. I mean, over the last 3 games, 7 rebounds, 6 rebounds, 11 assists, also has 10 steals over the last 3 games. I mean, most of the value is going to be points, and he is able to get to the free throw line pretty well, has been shooting the ball pretty well the last few games, but yeah, he's not going to get you a ton of defensive numbers. And there probably will be a few games where he just can't hit a shot. And he's not going to stop shooting. He's not that type of player. So I think he is worth picking up, especially if Nesmith is going to miss an extended period of time. But expecting him to do more than just more of what he has already done because of the increased opportunity, I think is setting the bar a little too high. So points, rebounds, maybe a couple assists here and there. I think those are kind of the main things you're getting. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on Mathurin, Raph?
Yeah, I think he's been better, like you mentioned. At this point, he is a worthwhile pickup. If he's sitting on your league's waiver wire, I'd probably keep an eye on Jarace Walker just to see what he can provide in whatever role they give him. Likely coming off the bench, but he's someone that I think has the potential to be a valuable fantasy asset, at least in deep leagues, while Nesmith is out. They played him at the 3 during Summer League. Didn't go all too well from a production standpoint, but at least he has that reference to kind of fall back on in terms of the minutes. He can play either the 3 or the 4. He may have to pay a little bit more of the 4 just because of the losses they've had in the front court. James Wiseman, now Isaiah Jackson. Yeah. Probably have to move Obi Toppin to the 5 some as the backup center. So maybe Jarace Walker. I think Obi Toppin, obviously someone else to kind of consider in deep leagues too if he's available.
Yeah, I like that you just mentioned that because I was like, damn, it's so rough for the Indiana Pacers losing 2 front court players to Achilles injuries. So I was just literally going to ask you who's going to step up in wake of that. So I think it's a good call in Jarace Walker and Obi Toppin, who got paid a pretty nice little contract in the offseason. So definitely expect him to reap some of those minutes there. Brooklyn Nets, Nick Claxton's finally re-entered the starting lineup. Minutes restriction seems to be loosened a little bit. Are we feeling better about him and his long-term prospects, Noah?
I think better than at the beginning of the season, yeah. But I think also we need to consider that Noah Clowney didn't play in their last game. Ben Simmons didn't play in their last game, and he played 27 minutes. So, Simmons had been starting at center. Is he going to be the starter when he is back in the lineup? And I believe he's available tonight. And he'll be back. But when everyone's healthy, is Claxton the starting center, and is he playing 27 plus minutes? Is that something that's already, it may have been a report that I missed. That's already been said that that's what his role is going to be. Okay.
I think the expectation is that Claxton's going to start because that's kind of what, I think that's the lineup they had on the floor for a good chunk of Sunday's game when Simmons was available. So I think the expectation is that he's at the 5 and Dorian Finney-Smith will be at the 4. And the rest of the lineup slots in as you usually would see it.
Yeah, then I'm more optimistic. I think I am a little bit still a tad concerned about what the minutes allocation will look like because he only played 27 when both Clowney and Simmons were out. So if all three are playing, are they going to start him and play him 22 to 24 minutes per game, run some of the small ball lineup with Simmons at center, make sure Clowney gets his minutes, or is he going to be able to consistently get this 27 to potentially even 30 minutes per game? I think that's something I'll be keeping an eye on because when he's on the floor, we know he can grab rebounds and block shots, shoot a high field goal percentage for sure.
Yeah. Some concern. I mean, at least the minutes are trending up, which is what you want to see. I have him in one spot, and honestly, it hasn't been great so far. So you just got to hold on and wait to see that he gets these 30 minutes. And, Brooklyn's not in a place. I think they're playing above expectations right now, though that'll probably normalize and we'll start seeing some tanking and some minutes going to the younger players versus like the Dorian Finney-Smiths, the Ben Simmons, et cetera. PJ Washington's out Wednesday, at least with a knee injury. Raph, is there anybody that you think benefits from the absence of PJ Washington that you can actually slot into your lineups? If not now, then maybe later.
I'm going to say Najee Marshall. I like his skill set, versatile player. I think he can bring a little bit more to the table in terms of like secondary playmaking and defensive numbers than PJ can. So I think Najee Marshall would be the one that I would keep an eye on. That said, PJ was averaging about 3 defensive contributions per game before the injury. So you're getting good value there. But I think Marshall can come close to that if he can get, the minutes that boost that would come from a move into the starting lineup.
Any other thoughts on that, Noah?
No, Marshall was going to be the guy that I mentioned. He was good as a streaming option at times in New Orleans. I think it's a good opportunity for him.
Yeah, I think KOC called him one of the most important pieces of Dallas's season this year, which initially didn't probably look that way. But when you have, injuries like this and you get the opportunity to get some more time, I think we'll probably see Najee Marshall shine a little bit more. And that was actually, I picked Dallas to go back to the NBA Finals for the Western Conference. I just thought that they just had a really good offseason. That's what they need to do is improve their perimeter. And I think Najee Marshall is one of those guys that you may not recognize everything that he does in the regular season, but playoff time, you're going to need that defensive and, the shooting that he provides. So just a really versatile player. Want to get to some rookie reports. It's going to be a segment that we're going to continue to do throughout the season for those sickos that do play in dynasty leagues like we do and have 30 deep teams and are constantly looking at, the youth movement across the league. Obviously, this isn't a very productive rookie class right now, just by the sheer opportunity or lack thereof for a lot of these players to get in. But Noah, I want to hear from you. Who is one rookie that's kind of stood out thus far outside of who's just one rookie that stood out, whether it be redraft or dynasty that you're kind of really feeling right now?
Yeah, I'll talk about Zach Edey, this is mostly just because of his last game, but because he had a few games early on where he's playing less than 15 minutes and not really doing anything.
Trouble.
And even games where he didn't have foul trouble, and it was
just weren't playing him in the fourth.
Yeah. Just looking at his minutes in different games, against Chicago, they lost by 3. He had 1 foul. He played 14 minutes, and that's against Nikola Vucevic. That's what in my mind would be a pretty good matchup for him. But 2 straight double-doubles. Last game, he shot 11 of 12, which probably his field goal percentage would be good. It may not be that good, but should be pretty good. 25-12, 4 blocks, hit a transition 3 as well. That
was nasty.
I guess as following and got an open look and just pulled it, which was okay. If he's doing that, that's how you transition your game to be able to be effective in the NBA after being a back to the basket scorer in college. So if he's able to, he doesn't have to hit 4 threes a game, but if he can space the floor like that and give Ja room to operate and then still rebound and block shots, so he gave us a little bit of a glimpse as to what things could look like potentially later in the season or hopefully earlier than that with 25-12, 4 blocks. That's the guy that we were drafting at around pick 100 this year.
Yeah, it's nice to finally see some production from Edey. I had him benched on the 24-14 rebound game, unfortunately.
Yikes.
Yeah, that one hurt. But I was just waiting for that moment to all right, when's this guy going to be unleashed? And I think, that was probably one of the more entertaining games we've seen this year. Between Ja and his 360 layups that he just makes look so routine, ridiculous. But it's great to see he's getting that pick and roll chemistry with Zach Edey. Raph, who's a rookie that's kind of stood out to you?
I'm going to stay in Memphis and go with Jaylen Wells, a 2nd-round pick. I'm not selecting him so much for the production. He's outside the top 200 as the role. He's been the starter recently. No Marcus Smart, no Desmond Bane. They're going to be out for a couple more weeks here. So I think he's in a good position to where if you can't get like a Santi Aldama, for example, you may want to consider Jaylen Wells in a deep league right now.
Yeah, I've got him in a couple of deep leagues just for the minutes that he's playing, man. 30, 35 plus in the last couple. Definitely has shown a pretty versatile skill set for the most part. Kind of struggled with his shooting last game, but I think there is some opportunity here. One of the least heralded guys, I think, coming from this rookie class. So he has an opportunity, man, with the Desmond Bane injury and Marcus Smart. My guy is Bub Carrington. I know, Raph, you talked about him at length on the Q&A on Rotoworld on Tuesday. Make sure you guys check that out. I mean, Washington has a lot of opportunity, man, and it doesn't look like Malcolm Brogdon's coming back anytime soon. So I think it's a good idea to hitch your wagon to a guy that's averaging 34 minutes over his last 3 games, averaging 12 points, 6 boards, 7 assists. I mean, that's what you want to see. He even had a 4-assist game in the midst of that 3-game stretch. Just really showing a really nice fantasy profile here. So yeah, I think he's actually someone that you can start to pick up in redraft leagues. He's 20% rostered. So I think some people are already starting to get on the train, especially in 12 teams. Wanted to mention one player for dynasty's sake, Reed Sheppard. Kevin O'Connor just came out with a pretty lengthy article about how it's I don't know, it's a bit maddening that, Ime Udoka continues to give Fred VanVleet 37 minutes a night when Reed Sheppard, who's shown, an efficiency from the field, playmaking ability, just a really versatile player. I mean, at what point do you think that we'll actually see some lineup shakeup and maybe see more Reed Sheppard? Right now, he's only averaging like 9 minutes a game. Is there a chance, do you think, Noah, that he can actually crack the lineup for, say, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, even push for, if he can play at the 2 a little bit too?
I think we do need to be a little bit of, patient with that, because I know it just seems like, Udoka is doing a lot of things that probably fantasy managers and dynasty managers specifically don't want. Dylan Brooks is still starting and Amen Thompson's coming off the bench. And this is not meant to be a knock on Dylan Brooks at all, but I know everybody wants to see Amen Thompson play as much as possible. If I'm not mistaken, Cam Whitmore didn't even see the floor the other night. So it's like, so we want to see a lot of these young, exciting players play, but Udoka isn't here to help our stats. He's here to try and win games. And I think he's going to lean on the veterans a little bit more than maybe we'd like and give them more of a leash to work through struggles than he would with a younger guy, which fair. He's coaching for his job, just like every coach in the NBA always is. So I think, if it continues to be struggles for Fred VanVleet, then maybe, but if just because we haven't seen it now, I think, 7 games into the season I don't know exactly how many they've played, but I would give it a few more weeks. And at that point, if we haven't seen it, then I don't know. I'm not.
It's probably not coming.
Yeah. Maybe if they're, out of the playoff picture, but I don't really see that happening with this team. So,
yeah. I think it's the byproduct of just having a very deep roster, right? Like, maybe the Houston Rockets decide to make a move sometime by the deadline to kind of bolster or get whatever assets they feel like can help them win now or make that next leap into a real playoff contender, not a play-in team. But yeah, I think we're gonna have to be patient on this one. I think Raph probably agrees with that too. Not speaking for Raph.
We know what Fred VanVleet is at this point. Like, field goal percentage has never been a strong suit for him. And to be fair, Houston didn't exactly sign him for elite production. Like, you knew you were going to get numbers, but this was more about the intangibles and the leadership for a roster that really lacked it. So maybe Fred gets down to like 30 minutes per game at some point, and that's when you start to see a bit more of Reed Sheppard. But I wouldn't expect that in the very near future here.
Yeah. I think Fred definitely is what he is, and he's going to continue to play high minutes. He just raises the floor for this team. So I don't think there's going to be any pressing issue to get Reed on the court right now, unless they start losing games, and then we'll talk about it later. But sticking in Houston, man, NFL Week 10, Sunday night. It's a showdown in the Lone Star State this Sunday. Watch Jared Goff and the Lions take on CJ Stroud and the Texans as both teams fight for playoff position down the backstretch of the season. Coverage starts at 7 p.m. Eastern. only on NBC and Peacock. We'll see if we can get Nico Collins back in the lineup. I think that would be a huge boost for my fantasy team. But yeah, let's talk about the rest of week 3, man. So we got 13 games on Wednesday?
12. Oh, and your mic is muted, sir.
See,
there you go.
You're back. You are back.
Wires, man. Like the wire, you hit a wire and then but nah, so the rest of week 3. So we got 12 games tonight. I think we got 11 on Friday. We only got 2 days to stream here, y'all. So, Thursday and Saturday are your best options. The Bulls, the Spurs, and the Jazz, I believe, are the only that play on those days, both days. So I would be looking, if you're looking for some additional production, Kyle Filipowski has been starting. So I think he could be a good opportunity for fantasy managers there. Also, Ayo Dosunmu has been playing really well. I think you could pick him up for a little short-term stream. But want to get your guys' thoughts on anybody else you may be adding this week outside of anyone we've talked about thus far from an injury perspective.
Give me Julian Champagnie in San Antonio.
Let's get it.
Yeah, because I know Stephon Castle started the second half of Monday's game when they lost. Who'd they lose? They lost Jeremy Sohan to injury during that game. Champagnie's already been starting for Devin Vassell. Don't know exactly when Vassell will be back. Could be as soon as next week, if I'm not mistaken. So I think Champagnie is a little bit of a runway for him to give you some good value, especially with them playing Thursday and Saturday on the good streaming days.
How about you?
Yeah, Champagnie's interesting. I know he had a couple stretches last year where he was a good streaming option, and then also during those times where it was like he was supposed to be playing well, he just simply didn't. So I do think that he'll definitely benefit. And he did play well in their last game, but you could also throw out Stephon Castle as well. I think the names that you mentioned, Ayo Dosunmu and Kyle Filipowski, are both names that I was gonna throw out if they weren't thrown out from the other 2 teams as well. So I feel like those are probably your top 1 from each of the 3 teams that played both days.
Yeah, and staying with, I guess, looking ahead to week 4, there are 2 teams that play 2 games next week. It is the Denver Nuggets and Golden State Warriors. Are you less interested in Peyton Watson or Julian Strawther just because of that schedule, or do you think that this is a long-term hold for Peyton Watson? Like, you're not worried about the schedule implications of this?
Yeah, I'm not worried about the schedule just because, like you said, it is a longer-term injury for Aaron Gordon. I believe the diagnosis was 2 to 4 weeks, but it wouldn't shock me if it ended up being longer. So, even if it's only 2 games next week, they still have 3 more games this week. And then I haven't looked at the schedule that far ahead, but I would assume it's back to normal 3 to 4 game weeks. So he's, I would assume, going to be incredibly good, especially in category leagues. So I think even if you have to sacrifice only getting 2 games of him next week, it'll be worth it.
Right. Raph, and is there anyone that piques your interest from a waiver wire pickup perspective outside of anyone we've talked about?
I think what I would mention about the Nuggets is that their first game next week isn't until Friday. Oof. So that's something to consider. I know I think that wouldn't hurt me too much in terms of considering Watson as a long-term hold, but that is something, depending on your roster build, you may have to take that into consideration next week. Whether or not you hold on to him after the 3 that Denver plays the remainder of this week. Right. But I don't really think there's anyone else. I kind of feel like we've touched on everyone that could be touched on in terms of streaming value at this point.
Yeah, I think I'm surprised that we actually missed Sohan's injury, and then Greg Popovich is actually going to be taking an indefinite leave for his health. So we'll see what shakes out in terms of the San Antonio Spurs. But yeah, they've been kind of mum on Devin Vassell. Haven't really heard much there. Hopefully we'll be getting Trey Murphy back soon. I think it's starting to get to the timeline where he's supposed to return from his hamstring injury. So we'll continue to tap in. Make sure you check back on us next Wednesday, 2 p.m. Eastern time on Twitch. For Raphielle Johnson, Noah Rubin, and Dan Titus, I'll see you next week. We'll see you next week.